We are live. We are live. We're live. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch. We're live everywhere. So, welcome to Pan-African Perspectives, your weekly live stream where we talk about all things West Africa related, news, events, things that are happening. Today is an interesting one, because we're going to talk about some things. We're going to answer some questions that you guys have had. You guys asked me a lot of questions, and I think now is the time to go through some of them. So what I thought I would do today is I'm going to go through some of the questions that you guys have been asking me about life in Ghana. Then we'll go over some of the questions about you guys have been asking me, some of the questions you guys have been asking me about life in Sierra Leone. And then we are going to talk about the differences between the two and, of course, moving to the United States. My life has been a whirlwind the last 5 years. Those of you who don't know, I have lived in 6 cities in 5 years. So Los Angeles, Vermont, New York, Accra, Ghana, Freetown, back to New York. And I spent a lot of time in other places as well. Vermont's not a city, it's a state, I know. But I've traveled a lot, lived in a lot of places for at least 3 months or more, specifically on the continent of Africa for about 4 years. It has been a whirlwind over the last couple of years. A lot of questions have been asked. I've done content about it, but now we're here to talk about it. So I guess we should just get right into it, right? You guys have been asking for it, so we're going to get into it. But first, let me make sure you guys can hear me. All right, cool. Manalix here said coming in loud and clear. Good. The microphone is working. That's good, because I did go out and buy a microphone. All right, so let's start with your questions about moving to Ghana. I'm going to go through some of them. There's a lot of questions here. I'm not going to be able to go through all of them. And for future reference, guys, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them into the description below, put them into the comment box. So just comment on the live stream if you have any specific questions for me. Also, let me know where you guys are watching from. I know that you guys can hear me, but let me know where you're watching from, and I'll shout you out and shout out your city. So first question, right off the bat: how difficult is it to obtain dual citizenship or Ghanaian citizenship? That's a great question. So the question is answered as followed. It's actually not that difficult. The challenge is knowing when it's going to be available. So Ghanaian citizenship was offered to a little over 800 people in the last 6 months. Now, that was done right at the end of the previous administration's rule over the country. They are out of office. There's a new president in Ghana. He had himself done a citizenship ceremony for folks prior to, in his one term previously. He is back now for a second term after being out of office for 2 terms in between, where the opposite party took over. So I presume he will have the option of going to get your citizenship, and I will definitely be there to talk it through. I will say that you have to be a part of certain groups. You'll be alerted. You have to fill out an application, go through an application process. It is done by executive order in Ghana. Different people got it. Different people who should have gotten it didn't get it. And we will talk about more specifics on that at a later date. But I just want to answer that question overall. It is not that difficult. There is a bit of a process. You can go through the executive order process that the president does, and that usually has to do with folks that are living there. And so there's some things that are on the docket that we should expect to hear from the new president in the coming months. He just started, so we expect to hear from him soon. He's very big on Pan-Africanism. He's been talking a lot to the AES leadership, and so I tend to think that there will probably be some citizenship discussions coming very soon in the near future. Africa Emerge says, hello, Joe, watching from the Sunshine State, which is the state of Florida, for those who don't know. T. Took says, hey, bro, salute. Do you know anything about citizenship in Burkina Faso by way of ADDI? And do you know if Salon citizenship will be allowed to obtain? So the first question is, I am working to get an expert on the Burkina Faso discussions. This one's tough because it is in French, and and there hasn't been much in detail of this. I mean, I've heard it; it's been in passing, but I haven't heard the details of it. And I tried to look it up, didn't find much on it. So maybe there's something coming soon. Now, do you know if Salon citizenship will be obtained or allowed to be obtained? It is. It is back up and running. There are people coming to Sierra Leone right now as we speak in the next couple of days, if they haven't already arrived, to start their process of citizenship. So it's absolutely back up and running again. If you guys want to know more about that process, go back to my previous live streams where I've talked about citizenship in Sierra Leone. Really a ton of stuff there. Let me just see if there's any other questions, comments coming in from you folks on IG. Anybody on IG got any questions for me? I know we started a little late. Okay. Arif says, define what Pan-Africanism means to you from your perspective. What are your goals? That's a great question. Great question. So what does Pan-Africanism mean to me? It means the eventual goal of getting to a United States of Africa, meaning that Africa operates more as a large territory or country, and we have our rightful place on the world stage where we operate as one unit and operate together. Now, the time frame for that is a little difficult. I'm not really sure when that will happen, but that's what I'm looking forward to seeing at some point in time in the near future. Now, what are my goals? My goals are to get people to do three things: visit the continent of Africa, invest on the continent of Africa, and move to the continent of Africa. And that's really our people, those who are descendants of Africans, whether you came to the United States by being trafficked through your own accord in the 80s, 90s, 70s, 60s, whatever, and your descendants, or if you are a FBA. All of us, I think, should be really looking at diversifying our interests, our assets, and our lifestyle to include the continent of Africa. And so that's my goal, is to ensure that we get to that place. All right, so we got was it Dama Skiza is from Buffalo is watching. Who else do we have? So we got Florida, Buffalo. Black King is watching from North Carolina. Shout out to you. Regman Music is saying peace and blessings. Peace and blessings to you too. All right, cool. So let's get back to some of those questions. So that was the question on citizenship, right? That was one of the questions that came up. Another question, if I can actually get the document going. Where's my questions? Okay. Catherine Smith is here. Great to catch you live. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you being here. I definitely had my questions, and now I've seemed to have lost them. All right, so okay, here we go. Here are the questions. I found them. All right. So, what is the job market like in Ghana, and are there good employment opportunities? It's another great question. So, for many who live there, they'll tell you that there aren't a lot of job opportunities. But I will say, compared to other countries that I've been to, Ghana has a lot of foreign direct investment, and there's quite a bit of opportunity there. So here are kind of some of the sectors where you can find work. There are food delivery apps. There are e-commerce sites. There's a booming real estate sector. There's always need for healthcare. There's always need for teachers. There's definitely need for tech. There's a need for like advisory in tech as well. There's NGOs. The NGO sector is very large in Ghana. So, and then there are other sectors as well, but those are the sectors that I directly came in contact with. And so, and listen, there's also manufacturing. Tema is a big manufacturing hub, and then there are all kinds of businesses all around the continent. I mean, all around the country. And so, there's plenty of employment opportunities for those of you who know where to look and to know what to look for. Now, many companies do pay in Ghana cedis. They do not pay in other foreign currencies. And so I worked there for an e-commerce company called Jumia. I got that job within 3 months of moving to the continent. I was working in that job within a month or so of moving to Ghana specifically. And that came because I had a network of folks who introduced me to people at the organization. And I'm forever grateful for that experience, because that was one where I learned a lot. It was very stressful, but I learned a lot. Paid me in Ghana cedis, but I was working to learn, not to earn. So there wasn't a lot of earning, but there was a lot of learning. So it's a really great experience. I definitely recommend, if you have the opportunity to work on the continent while living there, and if finances are not an issue, which it is for most people, I definitely recommend doing it. If not, I would recommend you find remote work and be able to live in Ghana on, 80K plus salary will be very, very, like, a very nice lifestyle to be able to live in the live in Ghana, if you're getting paid in the US or elsewhere for a remote company. What are the real estate investment opportunities? That was a good question. So listen, there's always an apartment to buy, a condo to buy, land to buy, houses to build. Ghana is constantly evolving, constantly under construction. That is a country where there is plenty of opportunity to buy. Now, there's another question is about the expensive to live compared to the United States. Now, I have lived in major cities that are very expensive in the United States. New York, Los Angeles, very expensive cities to live in. As an adult, I paid rent in both of those places. I paid anywhere from $1,000 to $3,800 a month in rent. I know, sounds crazy, but I've paid that monthly in rent in those two places. So relatively speaking, Accra, Ghana is not that expensive to these two cities. However, I did see a video of somebody from like Ohio or something who had moved to Ghana and was talking about the prices being too expensive. He had some very disparaging remarks. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but I disagreed with some of his elements of what he said. But it's true. I mean, you can find apartments for about $1,000 a month. It's not cheap. You're going to have to spend some money, but it is worth it if you can find a way to subsidize your costs, right? So like if you travel outside of Ghana at all and you can have an Airbnb, you can subsidize your costs in that apartment. But you can find apartments for about $1,000 a month that are like luxury apartments with all the amenities that you need. Multiple like bedrooms, 2 bedroom, 2 bathrooms with generators and with water, hot water, running water, hot water, running water, all the things that you need. You can find all of that in Ghana for about $1,000 a month. You want to go up to $1,500, you can find even more. You can go down to $500 for a 1-bedroom and $700 for a 2-bedroom. It's just going to determine the quality of the amenities and the building that you're dealing with. There are apartments at all price ranges all around Accra, and it's all going to really be dependent on your budget and what you're looking to, like where you're looking to live and how you're looking to live. I hope that answers that question. If guys, by the way, if you have any other questions, drop them in the chat. Definitely here to answer your questions. So if you're on TikTok or Instagram or everywhere else, put your questions in the chat. I'm here to answer those questions today. Today is the day for answering questions. So again, for those of you who are just joining, I'm answering the questions that people have, right? And maybe we'll get to some of the comments. It seems like there's a lot of questions that people had that they were sending me. So I may not be able to get to some comments from previous videos that I was planning to go through and answer, but it just seems like so many people were asking questions that I'm going to go through those now. But if you have questions in the live stream, or if you're watching this as a replay, feel free to put them in the comments. We got answers for you. Um, how reliable are utilities like electricity and internet? Huh. Great question. So Ghana is actually pretty good with electricity, considering some of its neighbors and or fellow countries in the ECOWAS region. So Ghana, I mean, I remember getting, having power outages for about an hour at a time, once, maybe twice a week on average. It's annoying, but it's not something that would really be devastating and impact you that negatively. Generally, there's light. And the buildings, most buildings you can find, if you're paying the kind of money that I was just talking about, 1,000, whatever, they're gonna have generators. So yeah. And as far as water is concerned, I always had water, except now that was the building that I was in. Not everybody has water in every building they live in. Depends on how much you're paying for rent. But those numbers that I gave you, you'll definitely have water. I had an issue where somebody was doing construction. They hit a main water pipe, and the water company shut off water to that section because it was just like spouting water out into the street. And so we lost out on water for like not 2 weeks. It was almost a week though. And it was annoying because I had no idea. They didn't preemptively tell us. We just had to find out one day and go ask what happened. Now, in terms of reliable electricity, generally around the country, if you can get fiber, well, generally around the city of Accra, I should say, if you can get fiber, which is fiber optic cables that connect all the way back to the main hub, you should be fine. I had pretty good internet speeds, but I will say many people go on to purchase satellite services, etc., to try to maximize those speeds. But it's not bad. It's not bad. The internet's not bad. Here's a great question. Catherine Smith says, why are so many Ghanaians and other West Africans try to get to the USA or Canada? I've seen them call these countries paradise. Yeah, great question. Considering why, if I'm trying to get people to move or at least visit and invest in Africa, why are so many Africans trying to get out? Here is why, right? America and Europe and Canada do a great job of promoting their countries as countries to move to and live to, because the opportunities are vast in terms of the number of opportunities. Unfortunately, not everybody is able to access those opportunities. And so many people are looking to escape their environment because they feel like if they escape their environment, it's going to develop into a better circumstance for their overall, living. And generally that is not the case. There's all kinds of videos, people moving to France and living in poverty and are unhoused. There are videos of people in the United States, same situation. So here's what I would say. As someone who's lived on the continent and who goes back frequently, I hear this all the time, and who has parents who actually left and moved to the United States. The thing that the United States offers you as a benefit is the ability to make a lot of money if you can figure it out. And I would say make that money and invest it back home. If you can find a way to do that, that's the win. So if you can't do that while in country, you're having challenges, whatever, and you're from the continent, if you're from the continent, specifically Ghanaians, and you leave, invest back home, because your return on your investment is going to be so much bigger than it could be in the United States, even as you're starting out, right? Because right now the prices of real estate are just continuing to rise, and people are charging dollars now. And so the greatest wealth transfer in the world that's happening right now is baby boomers to Generation X, millennials, and Gen Z in the United States, but like in all the first world countries that consider first world or the global north. What's happening in Africa right now is a very similar thing. So if you bought land if you bought an apartment or a house in the 80s or 90s in the United States, your house is worth, tremendously more, exponentially more. I mean, there are places near where I am now. I moved into this apartment that I'm in right now in Brooklyn, New York, 21 years ago. In about 6 weeks, it'll be 21 years since I moved into this apartment. Houses that are a block away were worth $200,000 at that time. These houses now are worth $1.2 million. When are you ever going to have a situation like that again in America? It's very difficult because now it's going to have to be the 1 million and hope that it grows to 4 million. But in Africa, you have that ability to buy land and to see that kind of exponential growth over the next 15 years as people are upset with American administrations that come in, as people are more and more understanding the value of buying land on the continent, diversifying your interests. So you can be that person, whether that's passing on generational wealth and having that wealth transfer to the next generation for you and your offspring, or if that's for you to sit and hold onto an asset and be able to offload that asset, whether it's land, a house, whatever, or even rent it in the meantime in the next couple of years. So, yeah, I mean, I would say people are running because they don't totally know the value of what's there and may not have the revenue within country to really make it work. So it might make sense for them to come to the States, earn some money, send it back home to be able to build what they need to build. If that's what needs to be done, then that's what makes sense. I wouldn't discourage people from doing that. As someone who has seen so many other foreigners go to Ghana and other parts of Africa, I know that that's what I need to do. I want to get out ahead of this wave as people are doing that. I want to be involved in that process and help shepherd people over. And so, but if you're there and you're seeing it every day, you might need a different perspective to know how valuable it is to come back. And so, yeah, I mean, look, I'm the product of two people making decisions independently to leave West Africa and move to the United States, have children in the United States, but then planned or have moved back to West Africa. And so that's generally what happens as people get to that age when they want to retire, because it's expensive to retire in America. It just is. And so many people tend to move back to the continent when it's too late to be able to do anything like build or to invest. And so that's why I tell people, if you're living on the continent and you move, definitely come back as often as possible. And then those of you who had the privilege of being born and living in the West, take those finances and invest them back home. London Boy for Life says, "Hey Joe, hope you're doing good." I am. Hope you are well. Tien Sunshine says, "Were there recent attack on Burkina Faso recently? I saw a video, but not sure if it was true. Thanks for all you do." Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there have always been attempted coups throughout the time that Ibrahim Traore has been overseeing the country. I would say, though, that there's a lot of misinformation, and coming up in about 2 weeks, we will be talking about AES on This Month in Africa with Enem Richardson, who is on the ground in Burkina Faso and will be able to debunk the rumors and the misinformation. So more to come on that. Smoke says, "Make your money and run to the continent." That's right. Menelik says, "What areas in Ghana would you recommend looking into when it comes to buying property?" So here's what I would say, depending on your finances. So if you want to buy and you want to build yourself, a couple of places that I would recommend. I think Chado is an area that's up and coming, a little bit more expensive than it used to be. There's now North Legon, there's East Legon Hills, there's West Legon. These are all areas that used to not be really considered Accra, but now they're considered Accra. They're like kind of the outskirts. With real estate, as cities expand, real estate agents always find ways to name areas something that sounds like it's closer to being in the city. But I always recommend you buy in a suburb, like a very close to the city suburb, like right outside, 5 minutes outside, 5 to 10 minutes right outside the city borders. The reason for that is that every city expands. People always tend to move out because every city gets more expensive, right? That just happens over time. And so if you have land right outside any capital city, you can buy it for cheaper than what it would cost to buy within the capital city. You'll be able to develop on that land, and you can watch the value of your land grow in the coming weeks, months, years, as time goes on. So East Legon Hills, North Legon, West Legon, Chado. Some people are even buying in Tema. Now, I also say there are people buying in Cape Coast as well. It depends on what you want to do with that land. If I'm you, I'm telling everyone out there, when you're buying land and you're buying property, try to turn it into an income property. I know the idea of the American dream was always buying a house, and most people buy a house and it doesn't make them money. I definitely recommend, if you can buy something, you can make it a multi-story. So like I'm building, multiple units on my property. I already have a guest house. We have a three bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, first floor that's about to be completed in the next week or two. We're going to do a second and a third floor, right? Those apartments will be rented, and so there's always going to be income coming in from those units. And we'll do short-term rentals, we'll do long-term rentals. Every piece of real estate I'm looking for, I'm either looking to rent it out completely or stay in it and rent out another piece of it. And that's how you guys should be looking at things when you're looking at buying. So not only where do you buy, but what you should buy. Catherine says, Joe, great explanation on my earlier question. Very thorough. Thank you. You're welcome. All right. So any other questions on IG? Peace and blessings. I already got that. Okay. Here we go. There's a question. Do you fear the concern of migration by the diaspora that can afford to live back to Africa with their financial capital could lead to a them and us separation between migrants moving back? Yeah, I mean, there's always the potential for that. I think it just depends on how we integrate with society when we move to different countries. For me, when I moved to Ghana, I've tried my best to integrate with society. If I'm out filming, I'm not just taking, I'm doing, right? So, if I'm filming apartments and going on tours, I'm paying the real estate agents, for their time. If I'm not even going to end up renting from that person, I'm still paying for their time, and they make you pay anyway, but still, just give people tips. I think if you are going to be moving somewhere, you're going to be gentrifying an area. The goal is to be giving back to that area however you can. So just think about that. There's always going to be some people who are going to be upset with another group of people coming in and taking over. But I will say this, they're less likely to be upset with us if we engage and they see us like them than they might be with others, because it's going to be happening no matter what. It has been happening no matter what. The Lebanese, the Asians of all sorts. So that's, Indians, Chinese specifically. I've met a few people from, the Philippines as well in West Africa. And so, these groups of folks have all been migrating for quite some time. And so, I think it's on us to understand why they're doing it and what can we figure out from what they're doing and do it ourselves. Great question, though. Us versus them mentality. That is something that can happen. With capital versus the local community they can't afford, basically privatizing the local African communities and blocking them out from being owner class. And how do you envision mitigating that? Well, blocking them out from being the owner class is a long-standing issue, long before Black Americans or any of us started coming there. Ghana real estate is priced in a way that almost no person who has who's from what is considered a middle class background will be able to own. It's like almost any city around the world, really. Most of the pricing, most people who are locals that are from there are outpriced. Just in general, they're just outpriced. So it's not us that are going to bring this outpricing. That's long before 2019, in the year of return, was the land and housing outpriced for acquiring it. Now, rentals probably have gone up pretty significantly, but rentals have been going up no matter what, because again, all of these other groups have been coming in. And so, I mean, it might behoove you to buy something and rent to the locals, right? And rent at a price that is able to be rented out, or at least hiring locals for the work that you're doing. But yeah, I mean, look, it's already happening. We are not the ones that are going to be causing it. I think we just need to be more responsible when we get there if we're going to be involved in it. But that's another great question. And that was from, by the way, let me shout you out. That's from Arif 2310. That was a great question. Any other questions from Instagram? Brady says, do you think the USA demanding visas for Africans to enter their country is fair? So I do think every country should have their own process for having visas. That's normal. In fact, many African countries require Americans to have visas to come there. So that's normal. I don't think that that's an issue. I mean, I think you have to kind of know who's coming to your country. If we're going to have these artificial borders and we're going to call them countries, then you should have a visa process. Now, should it be so strict? I don't think so. But that's a conversation for a longer time. I can go much more into that. I mean, I have challenges with the way the United States treats Africans through the visa process, to be honest. Having talked to friends who, really wanted to come to the United States, have done everything properly, and still could not get a visa. How much to build a home in Ghana, 3 bedrooms and 2 baths? That price can vary. It can cost you $40,000 all the way up to $200,000. Depends on where you buy, what you buy, who you have building, right? So, I've seen $50,000 condos. I have seen $200,000 duplexes, and I've seen everything in between. So with Ghana, energy reliability is largely based on the area you live in across Africa. Yes, that is true. But we were talking specifically about Ghana in that sense when I was talking about what I was talking about. But yes, Nigeria has some challenges. Sierra Leone has some challenges. Burkina Faso had been having challenges. They're working on that. Many countries, Gambia had challenges. So many countries have their challenges with light for sure. Okay. Lilitha says, good day, sir. My name is Lilitha. I was born and bred here in Eastern Cape, South Africa, and I currently reside here. And you're looking for some help. Hopefully someone will be able to help. Okay. Rash Troy 876 says, how are you doing my family? The right most honorable Marcus Garvey, the teacher, first Black liberator at home and abroad, said people who forget their origin I think we're missing some phrases in there, but I get what you're saying. Don't forget your origins. Yes. I'm concerned about the diaspora wars and the safety for African Americans. Yeah, you don't need to be worried about that. The diaspora wars and the safety for African Americans, it's not something. Ghana is one of the safest countries. When we're talking about Ghana, it's one of the safest countries in the world. It's like 20 ahead of the United States. So you don't have to worry about like the diaspora wars they're like not real. That's not a real thing. Like, I don't want to say that's not a real thing. I mean, there are a lot of people talking on internet, but in terms of people's safety, it's not a real thing. I mean, I met a lot of amazing people in Ghana, lots of great conversations with local folks. I don't see that being a real issue. It's not us that they're the most upset with, so any suggestions if this doesn't make sense, because I did talk to text. Was that your question about the diaspora wars? I didn't see your original question on the talk to text. All right, cool. All right, some other questions. Wow, some other thoughts and questions. Cash says, hey, Joe, hope you're well. It's been a while since I've been able to catch your lives. Well, shout out to Cash. Thank you for joining. TN Sunshine says, are there countries that aren't as open to us moving there? Which top 5 countries do you recommend? I don't know much about folks who say they're not happy about us moving there. There are people with opinions in every country, just like there are many people with opinions here in the United States. Now, here's what I will say. The countries that I recommend moving to in Africa, no particular order: Ghana, Nigeria, I would say Sierra Leone, if you're from Sierra Leone and you have some Sierra Leone connections, Kenya for sure. South Africa. Kenya and South Africa have really big economies. So does Nigeria. In terms of, you know, infrastructure, Kenya and South Africa are known to be the best. They both have number 1 and number 2 medical care. So South Africa is number 1 in medical care. Kenya is number 2. And so, those are 2 countries that people definitely recommend. Now, for other reasons, I like to recommend West Africa just because of the travel back and forth to the United States, access to the US and to Europe. I prefer West Africa. So, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, these are countries that, depending on what you do and what your background is, these are countries that might be interesting, especially if you work in the NGO space or you have your own business. Sierra Leone will be great. Ghana will be great. Nigeria will be great. But it all depends on how much money you make outside the country and what you plan to do when you get to the country. From earlier, Pro Woman is saying good points. Mistake too many are making is putting too much money into land and single family homes. If a flood or fire damage happens, no insurance, you'll eat the loss. That is true. Cash says, I agree with your thoughts on giving back and contributing to the local community economy. I plan to purchase in Kumasi and start a business to employ locals. Nice, Cash. London Boy for Life says, would building a house using containers be cheaper? Building a house using containers would be cheaper. What I understand, though, is the container houses are interesting and work very well for climates that don't fluctuate so much. They don't have a lot of rain, or aren't really cold or aren't really hot. From what I understand, if you want to set up a container properly, it becomes expensive to outfit it with all the things you need to be able to make it work. But if you just wanted a shell of a house that's steel or aluminum or whatever it is, a container might work. But I hear that it's a much more difficult to maintain and to keep going in places like the continent of Africa. But it is a good way to get a starter house going if you want to just get a shell on the, a shell of a space on the ground. But it can get really hot inside because it's metal, right? It's metal. And so think about how hot the sun is in Ghana, and it just tracks heat. I remember a lady who I used to buy like my snacks from across the street where I lived in Ghana, and she had her store in the container, and she would not even, if she sat in the container, she would immediately fall asleep. That's how hot it was. And she'd keep the container open and try to get a breeze. But once you just stepped into the container, you could feel the heat. So it's going to take a lot of cost to keep the container cool. So I don't recommend containers. I recommend using the process that is in place today with builders. Eric Jackson says, how is the Black-owned manufacturing sector in Ghana? Black-owned, Black-managed, African-managed, African-employed, African-owned is a challenge. Many of the larger businesses around the continent of Africa are owned by other folks who have come there throughout the last 100 years. Many of the businesses are owned by non-Africans, non-indigenous Africans. So that is one of the challenges that you find. But I will say Ghana is a country that does have a pretty significant indigenous-owned sector of each economy. However, the largest businesses tend to be owned by other folks. But like people are bringing in franchises and other things. But like large manufacturing generally is owned by foreigners because there are large manufacturing systems in their home countries. So like India and China, right? So you'll find a lot of that being transplanted and that information and knowledge being transplanted from there to the continent. So that's one way to look at things, right? So America has spent 40 years outsourcing all of its work to other countries, right? And so that is not America's core competency. So other people who have moved to the continent of Africa has taken their core competency and brought it there. So that's manufacturing. That's of goods and services and foods and all those kinds of things. What do you have as intellectual knowledge, as an understanding from the United States that you could bring to the continent of Africa, right? Something to think about. TN Sunshines, do you plan to move there permanently or go back and forth? I do plan to go back and forth for the next however many years until I have everything I want set up there to move there permanently. As of right now, all of my income comes from these United States and organizations that require me to be in New York City for some period of time throughout the year. And so I have to go back and forth in order to generate the income that I need to be able to invest back home. I just sent a pretty significant wire transfer to my contractor, for example, right? And so, that would not have been, I would not have been able to do that had I gone off the income I was living off of while I was in Ghana or in Sierra Leone. What do you think about the Volta region in Ghana? Is it a good place for investment? It could be. I mean, look, I always tend to recommend that people go right outside the capital city. But I will say this. There are things that you have to pay attention to that are happening in other cities, right? So like for me in Sierra Leone, I have land in the capital city. I also have land right outside the second largest city in Sierra Leone, about 3.5 hours away, right? So it's called the second city. And I think Kumasi in Ghana is called their second city. And so there are certain places where it makes sense to buy because they have growing communities, and the same thing happens at every major city, happens in those smaller cities too, to a smaller degree. It's a little bit more affordable in those areas, and but the return on investment's a little bit lower, right? But yeah, I mean, you can invest in pretty much anywhere. I mean, the Volta region is a region that's a pretty popular region. They have a couple of companies that are there. So yeah, I mean, it might make sense, but I mean, that's up to you to go there and actually do the research on the ground to make that decision for yourself. I can't speak to the Volta region in particular because I haven't been. I just know a bit about it just because of the conversations that I've had while in country. Joseph Brown says, Africans find it difficult to maintain a business and pass down to the next generation. Most people find it difficult to maintain a business and pass down to the next generation, but the smartest people do. That's a good point, though. Let me see if there's any other questions, comments, thoughts, concerns from the IG community. Mensco for real says, where were you at in Ghana? Or where were you living in Ghana? So I was in Chado, which is right by the beach in Ghana. And then I also lived in Leone, Osu as well for short periods of time. But most of my time living in Ghana was in Chado. And when I go to Ghana now, I stay in either East Legon Hills or in Chado. Maybe this time I'll stay in Osu again. I got a place that I really like there that I'll probably stay. It just makes my life easier staying there. All right. So some more questions. All right. So now let's get on to Sierra Leone. For those of you who had been asking about Sierra Leone, and I'll answer any questions about Ghana too. So put your questions in the chat. Happy to answer those questions. We're just 45 minutes in, and I've only gotten to the Ghana questions. I want to get to some of the Sierra Leone questions, and then I do want to get to the differences since coming back to the United States, because those are other questions that people ask. So somebody asked, what should I prepare before moving to Sierra Leone? Example, houses, finances, support network. So moving to Sierra Leone is going to be a mindset shift. That's the first thing you should prepare is your mind. Prepare your mind for the move. What do I mean? Sierra Leone is an analog country. Ghana is more of a digital country, if we're going to compare the two countries. What do I mean by that? And the United States is more of a digital country. So what do I mean by that? In the United States, I can order from Seamless, Uber Eats, Postmates, and there are a multitude of different food options that can bring food to my door. If I want to order groceries, Instacart, food come to my door. In Ghana, you have very similar options. You want to summon a vehicle, you can summon a vehicle in Ghana. Same thing in the United States. Uber, Lyft in the United States. In Ghana, it's Uber and it's Bolt, and there are other Yango and other services there. Your phone is really your remote control for the outside world when you're in the United States or when you're in Ghana. In Sierra Leone, it operates a little bit differently, still a little bit more analog. So there aren't any mass ride sharing services. There was one for a little while. It was overpriced, it seemed, and it seems that they've gone out of business. So there are no ride sharing services. So most people take a form of public transportation or acquire their own vehicles. If you need laundry done, usually people have somebody come to their house and do their laundry. And the expectation is that, you can have somebody come pick up your laundry, though. You just call them. It's not an app you use, but you can call them. There's a couple companies that do laundry. When it comes to transportation, I think that's the biggest thing. When it comes to food, you call a restaurant. If you want to order food, they might have to get either a bike person that usually parks right outside the restaurant, or someone that they hire themselves to deliver food, or you have to go to pick it up. So you just have to change your mindset that it's going to be more of an analog style lifestyle if you're living in Sierra Leone. So those are the things that you need to do. Prepare your mind. That's number one, and just prepare for the move. Another question is how to find a reliable place to live that offers comfort and security. Now, that is going to be expensive compared to the GDP of Sierra Leone. If you want 24-hour light, you want water with hot water, you're going to be spending $1,500 or so or more for all of that. I've heard up to $2,000, $2,500 for apartments that have that kind of lifestyle. And so just be prepared to spend a little bit more money for those things. Now, if you're willing to buy your own generator, if you're willing to install your own hot water heaters in an apartment that's already been built or a house that's already been built, if you're willing to do that kind of investment because you plan to stay in somebody's rental unit for an extended period of time, then you can upgrade to those things, but be prepared that you're going to have to spend out of pocket. Biggest challenges living in Sierra Leone, especially regarding infrastructure. I talked about electricity and water already, but healthcare. So healthcare, I will say, one of the challenges living in Sierra Leone is healthcare. Many folks who live in Sierra Leone tend to get procedures done outside of Sierra Leone if they can. They fly to India, Ghana, Nigeria, UK, US. In fact, the former president of Sierra Leone claimed to have had some medical issues, and he has been in Nigeria ever since. And it's been over a year, I think maybe 2 years since he's made that move. So many people that I know who make the move to Sierra Leone tend to go to other places to get their health care. When I was in Ghana, I had a primary care physician in Ghana. I still have a primary care physician in Ghana. So if I'm in Ghana and I have any questions about anything, I'm, feeling weak, or, if anything happens, like if I feel like I'm getting the symptoms of, malaria or something, I can call my primary care physician, and he can walk me through what I need to do, etc. Right. So, I think in Ghana, I have that. In Sierra Leone, I must say, that's not as well established for me as of yet. Do issues like unemployment, child marriage, and youth empowerment affect daily life? That's an interesting question. So unemployment can affect daily life just because you'll find that you'll meet people who unfortunately aren't able to find work or unwilling to find work. And so they will be asking you to help subsidize their cost of their living, right? And so that does happen pretty frequently and very often. Child marriage is something that has been outlawed in Sierra Leone. So I'm proud to say that was outlawed. So, obviously there are certain practices that people still have that, in today's world, most people do not find it abhorrent. So, but it still happens in certain communities. And so we're looking to eradicate that completely. Child marriage is crazy. I don't care, what you say. I think everybody can agree on that. Okay, what legal and bureaucratic requirements should I be aware of, such as travel document, taxes, and dual nationals and permits? I think you're pretty much fine there. Obviously everything requires some documentation. I will say this: anything you want to do can be sped up. You guys interpret that however you want, but in general, it requires a little bit of a, you're gonna have to give a little bit of a tip to someone to get them to speed up a process to get something done. It's kind of an expected tax for anything you need done. There's a lot of bureaucracy. Things are slow. Computers are slow. Not everything's in computers. And so what you'll find is that, if you want to expedite something, you're going to have to give a tip. All right. I think that's it from the list of questions. Let me see if there are any other questions that are coming in. Okay, there are a lot of questions coming in on YouTube. Well, let me get the Instagram ones first, because I saw a couple on Instagram. How much did you need to stray from your normal English in Ghana? I assume not much, but I don't know if you speak any other languages. I do not speak Tree or any of the other languages in Ghana. So I spoke only English, a little bit of their pidgin, but their pidgin is different. So I would just say Adekam or Adebab. Very like short phrases that I learned along the way, but I don't really speak their pidgin, and most people don't speak their pidgin in Ghana, honestly. Your time, yes, time is on your side. I guess that was with me saying that I'm going to take my time before. It's when they need it, their energy speeds up the process. Oh yeah, when you need to spend some money. 45 4 asks, what do I think about Sudan? I think it's a tragedy what's happening in Sudan. And I think that how do I think that the foreign involvement in Sudan has not helped, including Western involvement like the United States. That's what I would say. That's a conversation for another time. I can't get too deep into that. I prefer to have those conversations on This Week, or this week in Africa, or This Month in Africa. So tune in this Thursday and tune in a couple of weeks, because this Thursday and every Thursday is This Week in Africa. We're back. And then in a couple of weeks, we're doing This Month in Africa. And so we'll talk. We'll do a deep dive in that. Okay, let's see. I'm just trying to find some questions that I haven't already read. Interesting. What do you think of the overall mentality of the Black man in Ghana? I think you mean indigenous Africans, right? And this is from Furquan Ali. What do I think of the mentality? Okay, here's what I think. Any country that a person is multiple generations in that country, these folks become the most complacent folks in general in any country. And I'm only speaking to those who migrated there because they wanted to. So I'm not speaking about what Black Americans in America are dealing with, because there's systemic issues. So, but I'm talking about folks who move and they're multiple generations deep. They expect that the government is going to do things for them, and they tend to dislike immigrants. So Ghanaians don't like Nigerian immigrants. South Africans don't like Nigerian immigrants. Nigerians don't always like Ghanaian immigrants. And there's like these different belief systems that people, Sierra Leoneans don't like Fulai immigrants. And I'm not saying just not in general, but there's well, more generally speaking, yes, broader terms, there's like these sentiments, these underlying sentiments. Like Americans, a lot of these Americans don't like Mexican immigrants, right? There's these underlying sentiments of these folks coming and taking jobs, right? Coming here and succeeding above us. And that's what happens with people who have been there for a long time. And I think it's because they become complacent with the status quo. Whereas immigrants, when they come to a country, they've had to do a ton of work to be able to get the money to go to that country. Then they had to learn the rules of the road to be able to get work in that country, start a business in that country. So there's already a struggle they've had to go through. So when it comes to the work that they have to do, they already have dealt with real struggle. So the work that comes to them, is the work that they have to do, is not real struggle. I think when you find people who are so complacent because they're multiple generations in a country, they don't know like real struggle. I can't say they don't know real struggle. They don't know how to get through struggle. Most immigrants who move to a country have gotten through struggle, right? And so once you've achieved it once, you've already unlocked something in your mind that you know that you can get through a challenge because you've achieved it. It's now inherently a part of who you are. Your mental synapses have changed to believe that you can do that. So like for me, going through the financial crisis, that was an incredibly difficult challenge, being on food stamps and unemployment for, 9 months of my life, a little over a year, trying to figure out what I was going to do and, how I was going to make money. But getting through that led me to believe that I can get through any hard time financially, because I was able to do that with less skills than I have now, less knowledge of the world than I have now. So when I moved to the continent of Africa and I was working for myself, and I was living on pennies, I was like, I've done this before. I've done this before. It's not an issue. And so I say that to say, I think for many people, going through a struggle makes it a little bit less challenging for them in country. So to answer your question about the mentality, many people are complacent and they're upset about the government not doing enough for them. That's what I find, to be honest with you. But I will say that's like the average person walking on the street, right? And that's, when you talk about average, most people are average, but the average mentality is an average mentality. There are also exceptional people in Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, everywhere I've traveled across the continent. Exceptional people, no matter where you put them in the world. They're exceptional anywhere. And I will say, I've seen some of the most ingenuity on the continent of Africa, specifically in Ghana and Sierra Leone and Nigeria and many of the countries that I interfaced with. I saw some of the smartest, with the most ingenuity, like really, really interesting, smart people, who, no matter where, what did Jay-Z say? Put me anywhere on God's green earth, I'll triple my worth, right? I think that I saw that with many people that I've met. And so many of them decided to stay in the country of origin because they feel like they don't need to go somewhere else. They prefer to be where they are. And so I don't want to just say like all people, there obviously is many folks on the continent, and especially in Ghana and Sierra Leone, that are doing amazing things. And but when you talk to the average person on the street, they're going to complain about the government and how they're not doing enough for their own personal pockets. London Boy for Life says Sierra Leone Academy is really doing bad right now. It has been, continues to be. But if you notice, a country like Sierra Leone, which has always been considered a third world, bad economy, there are still troves of people coming there to do business, right? And so we got to find out who those people are, why they're doing it. Do you get into the businesses that they're in, or do you offer businesses and services to them because they find a reason to be there? Sorry, need to hydrate. TN Sunshine, am I able to purchase gold coins from there? I'm so glad to hear Burkina Faso is now mining their own gold, and wondered if I could support in that way. Just a thought. I don't know how. Okay, so Burkina Faso in particular, I'm not sure. In fact, in any of these countries, I'm not sure. Yes, for sure, you can do it at some point, but I don't know. I'm not sure how you can do it. But yeah, you can buy gold. I just don't know what that looks like. Does that mean commercially? Does it mean just buying straight up gold coins? I don't know what that looks like, but yeah, I mean, that's something you should definitely look into for sure. And I can maybe do some research on that and get back to you. Joseph Brown says, growing up in Nigeria in the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of successful Nigerian businesses. They no longer exist, I guess is what you're saying. But the Nigerian Lebanese have passed down to the next generation. Yeah, so many of the folks who are of Lebanese descent but living in Nigeria have passed on their businesses to the next generation. What I find a lot is many folks who are indigenous to the continent have more short-term thinking. And so, and by the way, that's something that you find in, BIPOC people in the United States as well, where they have a business that does really well and they sell it. And then it does not pass on to the next generation. So they do not pass on wealth. They pass on money, but they don't pass on wealth. Yikes, that wasn't supposed to happen. And so there's a very big difference, right? Pass on money, but don't pass on wealth. So many businesses get sold and they have that cash, but they don't train their children how to make money. So the next generation almost always uses up all the money that the previous generation made. And what you find with folks like many immigrants, so you find like immigrants in the United States, for example, the dry cleaner that I go to that I've been going to for 21 years. So the son is now taking over for his father at the dry cleaner that I've been going to for 21 years. Well, not straight for 21 years, but I've the first time I went there was 21 years ago because, I've lived in other places. But this dry cleaner across the street here in New York, I've talked to other people in other businesses in Sierra Leone and in Ghana who pass on these businesses to their children, but generally it's those folks that are like foreign nationals who move to those countries. They just have a habit of passing on these businesses to their children. And one of the things that we do is we can be a little bit more short-sighted, and that's something that we need to change. Africa Emerged says, I came to the United States in 1991, but I always knew I would return home and believe that this is the perspective of many Africans. I hope so. Just do it sooner than later. Don't wait till you retire to do it. That's what I find most people do. What literacy organization in Freetown would you suggest is reputable? And what is the literacy rate in Sierra Leone? 2 questions. Okay. That's a great question. I do not know what literacy organizations are reputable in Sierra Leone. I couldn't tell you. What I would have to just perplexity it, you know. But I know the literacy rate is lower than we want it to be. It's pretty low actually. It's really unfortunate. Much like in the United States, the literacy rate is not so great. But yeah, it's pretty bad in Sierra Leone. Send me a message though. I'll have to get back to you on that. Let me do some research and see if I can talk to some folks, because I would just Google it now on the phone. So I mean on the live stream. So shoot me a message, send me an email, and I'll be willing to answer that question for you. Tiggy says, true, money does talk. It does. I guess from an earlier conversation. Dual citizenship in Sierra Leone to renew, can it be done from the States? Technically it can be. It's harder to do. I'll point you to the direction of that. Send me a note, send me a message. I'll point you in the right direction for how to do it. Are you aware that women abuse in Ghana and Sierra Leone is high? Okay, the abuse of women, yes. And law enforcement or the authorities there keep it on the DL. Yeah, I mean, look, there are many people in relationships that are physically abusive. Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, I feel like a lot of that actually has to come from, you know, the colonizers, and that got passed on. Like I have a theory that beating your children came from the colonizers. You know, I don't know if that was normally a part of who we were and what we did. I think that came from colonizers for sure. At least that's my theory. Test my theory. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, so yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. It goes underreported for sure. Domestic abuse goes underreported. You're expected to just bear with it, you know. So yeah, that is quite a problem on the continent. But I would say it's a problem here in the United States as well too. All right. TN Sunshine says, are there expat communities that could help one assimilate to the culture and adjustments? Expat communities to help assimilate to the culture and adjustments. It can help you assimilate to a culture that is being built in those communities. But yeah, there are plenty. So in Ghana, there's Asebu, sorry. There's Migrating Culture Crossing. There's Beyond Investments. There's Shark Island that's coming up. There's the one that the Earn Your Leisure guys are doing. That's what I will say. In Sierra Leone, there's TAF, and there's a few other ones that they're escaping me. But I definitely say there are for sure things happening. There are communities to move to. Short-term thinking sums up our mentality in Africa, unfortunately. Jade Faith says, and that was Joseph Brown, by the way. Jade Faith says, it's Sierra Leone safe for a solo female traveler. Can I travel inland to Port Loco, Cambia, or so here's what I would say. I would operate like you would operate moving around any cities you're unaware of in the United States. So, for example, if you were going to Chicago, how would you move around Chicago? Like, how would you move around the South Side? You know, would you ever attempt to go to O Block? Those kinds of things. If not, then, you know, and how would you go to those places? I would say the same thing about if you're in like Miami or in New York, right? Would you go to Brownsville in the middle of the night? If not, how would you go to Brownsville? I say approach going around Sierra Leone in that same way. If you're unfamiliar, then you should definitely make sure that you have someone else there with you. It just acts as a deterrent. If we're being, perfectly honest, Sierra Leone is pretty low on the global peace index in terms of like it's not seen to be that dangerous. There's not a lot of violent crime in Sierra Leone because luckily there are not a lot of firearms. However, you just have to protect yourself as always. Farquan Ali says, do you think it's true 80% of Ghanaians don't read? Don't read or can't read. I think I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. I don't know. I can't tell you 80% because the people that I encountered all read. They were all readers. So I couldn't tell you if that's the case. I really couldn't tell you. Interesting question though. Afuya is here. Shout out to Afuya. Just joined. You joined. All right. Well, guys, look. This has been great. You guys asked a lot of questions. I've had to hydrate, and I'm gonna have to continue to hydrate, and I gotta eat dinner, and I have some travel next week. Oh, so here's some updates before I go. As soon as I sound like I'm about to leave, people just start jumping off. Wow, that was quick. Like 9 people just jumped off as soon as I said, well, it's been great. So a couple things. Number one is we're going live again this Thursday with Gloria Ayo. She is 20 years experience reporting on news, really great platform. Check that out. We did a live stream last Thursday. We're going to be doing them every Thursday. So stay tuned for that. I'm also on Wednesday putting out another video, part of the Congo series. So if you're interested in the Congo and what's been happening there, I have a series on the Congo that I've been putting out. I've done 2 episodes so far, so this is going to be the 3rd episode. And I've also been doing real estate every Sunday. And in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I'm going to start taking you from Ghana to Sierra Leone content. And so we'll keep you guys abreast of what is happening, so you know as it's coming. Afuya is asking if there was any discussion on Burkina Faso. We did briefly discuss it, but not much. That's going to be on Thursday, and this month in Africa, we'll have many discussions there about Burkina Faso. All right, guys. This has been great. I appreciate you all joining. As always, you know, the 3 goals is to get people to visit, move, invest. And for all of you, make sure you share this with at least 3 people you know who want to know more about what the continent of Africa might be like, especially Ghana and Sierra Leone. And with that, guys, I want to say thanks for watching. I will see you all on the next video.